and welcome everyone to the most interesting wine show on the internet, Bozzelli's TV. If you don't know why we're the most interesting wine show on the internet, it's because we consider wine a food.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen to that. And if you watch our show like I know you do, you know that I'm shamelessly biased about Italian wines, and the same applies to Italian winemakers. And today is a special show for that reason. We have Barboursville Vineyards here today, represented by Jason Tesauro, Sommelier, National Brand Director of this very illustrious Virginia winery, which is dear to our hearts because it's from our home state naturally, but they have done so much to put Virginia on the map. They're two founders. I guess the owner of the winery is Gianni Zonin, and then his partner in crime is Luca Pasquina. So we have two Italians who are really helping Jefferson realize his dream of rivaling France in terms of winemaking. Our founding father recognized the terroir and climate of Virginia was great for fruit trees. And, he, of course, we all know that he was interested in architecture and government, but he is also interested in winemaking. And he wanted Virginia to rival France in that department. And it's this vineyard that is doing that. I mean, they are up there with the best in terms of Virginia wineries. We are so grateful to have Jason here with us. Thanks again to our perennial special guest star, Holly Rocco Ferracci, who introduces us to all the luminaries in the wine world. It's really awesome, and I am notorious not only for being a proponent of Italian wines and Italian winemakers, but I'm also notorious for my long-winded introduction. Sorry, Jason. But before I end this introduction, let me just tell you how special this show is. Steven Spurrier. And we are celebrating the 45th anniversary of the Judgment of Paris just this Monday, past Monday. But he organized the wine tasting, the Paris wine tasting of 1976. And Steven Spurrier was once asked about some Virginia wines. And he paid Barboursville Vineyard, I think, the ultimate compliment. He said, if I was in a Richmond bar, I would be ordering their Vermentino.
Nice. One of the lines that stuck out for me that he said was, Virginia makes the kinds of wines that I like to drink. In a very simple Steven Spurrier kind of way. I contribute to his In Vino Veritas anthology, and we can pour a little out for Steven, who passed.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you. So, we're all fans of Steven Spurrier, but I thought that was the most epic compliment coming from the ultimate wine titan authority, Steven Spurrier, about a Virginia winery. And he also said, I love the Europeanness of your wines. There's a level of Europeanness, and he, coming from England, of course, had that Europeanness, which I think was awesome. But this isn't going to be an Austin tasting today, guys. Smash that like button, subscribe, comment. You're really going to enjoy this episode. And I always start, after my long-winded introductions, I ask our guests how they get into the wine business and how they end up with such a special house like Barboursville, Jason. So the floor is yours, and welcome to the show.
Nice. Thank you for having me. If all roads lead to Rome, all wines lead from Holly, apparently. Thank you for making the connection. I'm sorry, I can't talk about wine without some wine in my glass. Shall we start with the Prosecco?
Bubbles?
Yeah, let's start with some bubbles, please. Some bubbles for your troubles. A little Prosecco. This is the only wine on the table not grown on our estate. We love to drink sparkling. It's a pain in the ass to make sparkling. And thankfully, Barboursville is part of a constellation. This family, the Zonin family, has estates throughout Italy, from Piemonte in the north, Puglia in the south, and the headquarters are in Gambalara. And Gambalara in the Veneto, the soulful home of Prosecco. So Luca went there did the dosage, and smuggled all this back in his suitcase. So I'm happy to share with you our Prosecco. Salute.
Salute.
What got me into wine was food. Sono terza generazione. I'm third generation Italian. My family is originally from Piacere, from Campania, in a little village called Alta Villa Silentina. Actually in the DOC zone for Fiano, di Avellino, and Fermentino and Fiano, these southern grapes. Before my family settled there, they emigrated from Piemonte, and to this day, Nebbiolo is so close to my heart. But I didn't know any of this at the time. It was deep in the DNA, but only as a grown-up have I discovered that there were like actual roots. I just felt the connection from my Italian family and waiting tables. The first wine that moved me was a Nino Negri Cinque Stelle Sforzato, 1994.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, made from Chiavanesca, which is the local dialect for Nebbiolo. And through that wine and starting to unpack whence it came, the Italian sommelier who mentored me as I was working at Vini Vidi Vici, this important Italian restaurant in Atlanta, during the late 90s, in that moment when Super Tuscans in 95, 96, 97, 98, all in a row, created this buzz about Italy once again, right? Just thrust into the global wine scene when California had been dominating headlines. So through that wine, I decided at age 25, I set a goal that by 30, I will either be a sommelier or I'll be a published author. I started going through wine, spirits, and cigars. My wife called it the Vice Academy.
Sign me up. Sign me up.
Whilst working on my first manuscript. Fast forward, I'm 27 and a half, and I'm going to pizzerias, and I flip over the placemat, and I draw the boot, and I write in all the DOCs and DOCGs, and I know it cold. And now it's time to start to learn France. Now it's 28 and a half. I've got a manuscript and I've got a literary agent, but you need a publisher, of course. 29 and 3/4. I have become a sommelier. I'm now running the wine program at Vini Vidi Vici. And my 30th birthday comes and I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to be all in on wine. The manila envelope comes on my 30th birthday, my first publishing contract.
From Simon & Schuster.
From Random House. Yeah. I've written... I've since written 3 books, 3 national...
Let's plug all these titles. Awards. Okay, give me all 3 titles.
Sure. The Modern Gentleman, A Guide to Essential Manners, Savvy, and Vice. The Modern Lover, A Playbook for Suitors, Spouses, and Ringless Carousers. And then a Modern Gentleman second edition, basically a volume 2, if you will. Since I've been columnist for Men's Health and Maxim, you can find my work in Esquire frequently. I had a great feature in Decanter this year. I'm sort of their Virginia wine editor, if you will. Washington Post, New York Times, Travel and Leisure. I've got a food and wine piece coming up. All that is to say, my food and wine careers, or my wine and writing careers, moved in parallel. So once I became a writer and a sommelier, I followed my mentor's words of trust your palate. And when you marry a Virginian, you have to make that pilgrimage to Monticello, right? And it was 4th of July weekend, and we're like filled with the spirit, and Jefferson telling his tale, and he dies on the 4th of July. And I took home as a souvenir a bottle of 1998 Sangiovese Riserva, made by this Italian, Luca Pasquina. All the other Virginia wines had butterflies and blue dogs and unicorns, and this wine looked serious. And I opened it and I was thunderstruck. So much so that I faxed my credentials to Luca. It shows how long ago it was. And I said, I want to tell this story. And my Somm friends thought I was out of my flipping mind. They're like, you like Sangiovese? Go to Toscana. You like Nebbiolo? Go to Piemonte. I'm like, I'm going to go to Virginia. And I quit my job and moved to Virginia 2 months later, and that was 20 vintages ago.
That is the most epic origin story you'll ever hear on the
absolutely
internet.
is. Yeah.
I mean, I love the literary angle that brought you to wine, which is so awesome. Holly, I mean, let's just end it right now. This was the best show ever in like 10 minutes.
10 minutes, we broke the internet.
We broke the internet in 10 minutes. And then you said there was a seriousness to this wine. And that's what is resonating with me now.
Yeah.
But thank you for illuminating it for me, because I get it with Octagon, and we're gonna get to Octagon in a second. But I didn't get it initially with the other SKUs, stock keeping units, so to speak, to be
fancy
inside
wine
baseball.
speak, yeah.
I used to work in a convenience store. So and this guy's writing for Men's Health and Decanter Mag. But hey, we're all just drinking wine today and enjoying ourselves and getting to learn more about Barboursville Vineyards. And Holly said that this was going to be an awesome show. And if the threads don't say that, the wine will.
I started dressing up for Virginia wine from the get-go because in order to have people respect the wines, I needed to show that I respected the industry and the process. I still love that sommeliers are one of the last bastions of dress, even if it's not a fine dining establishment. A part of it is like the latte art on a great cappuccino is a way of making sure that the last step is as thoughtful as the single origin farmer whose shade grew those beans. And by the time you're putting your microfoam on it, the first thing people see is actually the last step in the process. And shouldn't it be with the same kind of integrity and thoughtfulness? So I thought, if I'm going out there with Octagon, with Nebbiolo, after these wine visionaries have put an ear to the ground and listened to Virginia and grown what she said is good, the least I can do is go out there and have the face match the kind of slow, contemplative thoughtfulness. So I didn't just throw this on. I'm like, I wanna rock some color because it's beautiful out. And my bespoke threads are a way of saying, I'm thinking about every step of the process the same way Luca and Gianni did.
No, I love the thoughtfulness in everything that you're bringing to this table today. No pun intended, Jason.
Right down literally to the table.
To the table. Yes. So this is let's move the capraise. But this table, I don't want to move the camera because it took a long time setting it up. But this table is what Holly... What is this table comprised of?
So this is an Octagon barrel. So the winery, and so Jason, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. Octagon uses first use only oak, or
correct?
Yeah. So so first use only oak, and so when they're done with the barrels, they are available. People could purchase them and. Or they may go into other programs perhaps, or, but, so I was able to, get a barrel and, so drove down. It's about an hour and a half from where we are in the state, to here. And so drove down and got a barrel. And then we had, you mentioned Atlanta, but we had a gentleman who makes furniture, make the table that we're sitting at, to go over the barrel. And, so this is we've been doing a lot of shows from the barrel room, as we call this. But the Octagon barrel is always at the center of it. And so Octagon is always, certainly a part of our, love and just a part of our thought all the time in terms of wine. And we're always excited about Barboursville Vineyards. And so this just keeps that with us.
Thank you.
I promised to take a snapshot and to include it in the video so that everyone can see what we're talking about, because it really is a work of art. It's very special. And Octagon, I think, is the creme de la creme of the vineyard.
Yeah, well, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
About this Vermentino first.
Oh, yes, the which thrilled Steven Spurrier. Yeah.
Well, Vermentino, I think of it as Italy's answer to Albarino. Vermentino, known as Rol in France, a stop drop in Rol, for this like lean, green, clean, very refreshing coastal style, steely white. I love it with oysters, with fresh fish. It's also the wine to drink while you're thinking about what to drink with what you're cooking.
Yeah.
Because it's on the medium alcohol side, so you can stay light and bright and still be able to operate light machinery.
Very
like an
palatable,
iPhone
yeah,
while,
exactly.
looking up recipes. It's in the Governor's Case this year. Governor's Case, the top 12 wines in the state. We have 3 of those 12, including the Governor's Cup winner. But Vermentino consistently showing up in that Governor's Case in a competition that really values these red blends. It's wonderful when we see these crisp whites also being treated with respect. White wines in Virginia are super important because they all ripen earlier, right? And you can't always count on the mercurial Virginia weather to show you the love all the way into October. So when you've got varieties that ripen late August, early to mid-September, you know that they can be more consistent in your portfolio. And Vermentino was the process of observation, cultivation, experimentation with warm and hot weather varieties from southern Italy. And Luca, growing up in Piemonte and summering
The north.
in Liguria, where Vermentino also prospered, he said it was in his teenage years that he was really exposed to Vermentino. I guess I should stop saying he grew up with it in his sippy cup. That's my kids, probably.
But Liguria is a maritime region.
Yes.
Okay.
And so having these varieties, we'll try just a half acre, and it takes 3-4 vintages just of a white grape to decide is it well suited. On the reds, because of the aging, you're looking at the better part of a decade just to go, oh shit, let's bulldoze and start again. We planted the wrong clone, the wrong variety on the wrong hillside. So, wine is slow. And once we established Vermentino, it opened up all of these ideas for us about, could we use it for blending? Could Vermentino presage the rise of Fiano and Falangina? It gave us a peek into what was possible beyond Viognier and Chardonnay and Pinot Grigio, which were stalwarts extant on the estate.
Can I ask, did it also lean you away from, as Steven Spurrier pronounces it, Petit Verdot?
Oh, you know what? He can say it however he wants.
Of course, but I know Petit Verdot's kind of popular in Virginia, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay.
And we do bottle a monovarietal Petit Verdot. It's not available off the state, in part because it's not, we don't grow a lot of it, A. B, we prefer it as a blending component. In Virginia, one of the stories I wrote for Decanter, the phrase I used was, around the world, Petit Verdot to me is cowboy boots. But in Virginia, we found a way to coax it into ballet slippers. There are very few places around the world where
Smash that like button.
very few places around the world where you can find monovarietal Petit Verdot for good reason. It's like the bruiser on the hockey team.
It's
the goon.
it's a very hardy grape, but in Virginia with our climate, we kind of need that, right? So it does well, it prospers here.
It brings color, texture, tannin to the party, and when I say in ballet slippers, by learning how to crop it and when to pick it, you start to tame some of those rough edges, and the perfume starts to come out of Petit Verdot, and you can handle it on its own without having to wait 20 years for it to soften enough to be likable.
So the emperor has no clothes. All these years, I thought Petit Verdot was the Tesla of grapes, and it's not. It's a blending grape.
Well, I mean, that's been traditionally its use, but in Virginia, we're seeing what's possible.
Growing up in Virginia. Yeah.
Right.
So awesome.
And I guess there is some thought process, like in Virginia, Cabernet Franc is kind of, some people might say, oh, that's Virginia's red grape. And you see a lot of it in Virginia, various wineries. but there are some who are saying, oh, soon Petit Verdot could possibly eclipse Cabernet Franc, potentially. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that because of our climate, right? With climate change and everything, and that because Petit Verdot is hardy, same thing perhaps with like maybe Petit Manseng over Viognier. I mean, there's, I think, I don't know if there's what sorts of discussions are happening within the Virginia wine world on some of these grapes, but from what I hear at the Governor's Cup, the tasting, the competition, that we're starting to see more of these types of varietals that are incredible and just really doing well and showing up as winners within the Governor's Cup, and so that's exciting.
Right. Well, you're tapping into something that's inherent in the excitement of Virginia, and that is the collaboration.
Yeah.
And you've got grape growers talking to each other. They're not hiding their secrets because no one wants to be the only Virginia wine on a list, and lest we be mistaken as an anomaly. And if you want to build a region, then you really need all those boats to rise. And right now, we basically have 3 tiers of Virginia wines. You've got really fun projects where people are like, hey, we've got an extra small fortune. Let's buy a piece of land. Let's bring out the bachelorettes and the concerts, and let's just have a badass time. And who cares if the wine is only half good? If we're having a great time in a beautiful place, like that's fun.
We'll monetize the tasting room.
Yeah, right. And then that's totally fine. There's a place for that in the industry. The second tier are these beautiful event spaces where you want to be in the Blue Ridge, in the Shenandoah, in Loudoun County. And oh, by the way, you're going to use our wines. And we grow our own grapes and we buy grapes from around, but the focus is on like the experience. And then there's the first tier, Barboursville, Linden, King Family, RDV, Veritas, any of the names that make that...
Williamsburg?
I'll put Williamsburg. Matthew Meyer's a very talented winemaker. They also have to please the masses, and so some of their wines are geared toward tourism and what have you, but they've done a lot of investment in their own vineyards. Loudoun County, in my opinion, the most exciting place in Virginia wine right now. Walsh family, one of the coolest wines. We see what's happening with Lightwell Survey and Keto Ridge, and Michael Shaps are exploring higher elevation grape growing. So these are outfits that are fanatically, meticulously devoted to soil. Some of them eschew visitation altogether on the large scale. They're like, hey, bring your people out, but no, we're not hosting parties of 20 because we want you to have a contemplative tasting experience and not like
intimate
boom shakalaka, right? So in that first tier, you've got grape growers who are sharing information with each other about clonal selections, literally the plant material that you're putting in the ground. They're sharing with each other how to crop so that we take that green vegetal note out of Cabernet Franc. It's been gone now for at least a decade, if not 2. But early on, one of the criticisms of Virginia Cabernet Franc was that they were too green. That wasn't Cab Franc's fault. That was us. You can't just Google Virginia plus winemaking and Ask Jeeves spills out what to do with Cab Franc, right?
Is Ask Jeeves still around?
Is Ask Jeeves still around? I miss him. That's where I got my sartorial, sense from. So now that
the satire's free today, guys.
Now that we know what to do, it's given us confidence to say, well, wait a minute. What else can we do? Do you know Jancis Robinson's Wine Grapes book?
Yes.
This 100-year tome. There are over 1,300 grape varieties around the world. Not all of them, of course, are Vitis vinifera, but let's say of Vitis vinifera, the great noble grapes you know and love, Scuppernong, Muscadine, and Catawba, Niagara, those are different species. Vitis rupestris, Vitis labrusca. For Vitis vinifera, there's over 500 just in Italy. So you take them and you plant them based on your observation. Oh, that is a hot climate maritime grape. Let's try Vermentino in our climate because we although we might not be right next to the coast, we do have the humidity. We certainly have the hot nights. We get the cool the hot days and the cool nights are what allow us to build acidity. If all you needed was heat to grow grapes, Florida would be the epicenter of American viticulture. You need heat by the day and sunshine, but you need those cool nights, and the winds in order to get that great sugar acid balance, and that's why the Mid-Atlantic.
You need that Russian River.
Huh?
You need that Russian River in California.
That's a beautiful spot. We'll bring it right here.
This is not a Cali Cab show. This is an Italian wine show brought to you by preeminent Virginia winemakers. I love the irony of all this. It's not really irony. I guess the world is smaller than we think it is. And we're much closer to each other. That no man is an island. And what Barboursville is doing is unique. And thank you, Jason. This has been such an education. I only have so many brain cells, but but this has been such an education today. Awesome. I mean, I mean, the last show was going to be 6 hours long. I feel like we need to give Jason 12 hours. This is going to be such.
I get paid by the word.
Oh, that's right. He's a published author too, guys. Rewind. He's got three titles, all available on Amazon. Okay, awesome. The Modern Man,
The Modern Gentleman,
The
Modern Lover.
The Modern
I have
Lover.
5 children, so it worked apparently.
Yeah.
And then volume 2 of The Modern Gentleman.
Okay. Yes.
You can find me on the Instas. Follow us at Barboursville, or me personally, The Modern Gent. And you can find my work primarily Esquire, Decanter, and keep eyes peeled. I've got a piece coming out in Food and Wine where I will declare that the heirloom tomatoes in Hanover are indeed the best tomatoes in the world. Fight me. That piece is coming out.
You heard it first here.
Hey, he's throwing down the gauntlet. There you go. Fight him.
Yeah.
Fight him. The first two. So we had a Prosecco. Prosecco. That was just delicious. What tasting notes am I missing? I don't want to call it just delicious though. What tasting? I'm in the presence of a budding Somm and a full-fledged Somm. So what tasting notes am I missing on the Prosecco and the Vermentino?
Well, let's pause there for a second. I've been trying over the past decade to have a fundamental shift in the wine conversation away from how wines taste and toward how wines make us feel. And I say this because, when it comes to food, we're like, oh my gosh, the cheese is so good, taste this. But when it comes to wine, we tend to be reticent. We're like, well, what do you think? And instead of externalizing our taste by, well, what did Parker say about it? What are the ratings? When we talk about the way wines make us feel, you don't need a fancy vocabulary. Like, you tap into, does it make you feel like putting a tie on? Or does it make you feel like taking one off? Does it make you feel like you've been transported? Am I outside? Am I in the yard? Am I in the mountains? Am I at the beach? Do I have a bocce ball in one hand? Those kinds of foundational, emotional connections to me are much more resonant than whether I get white flowers or green apples. That's also useful as markers, but as humans connecting to wine and food as a sensuous experience, I want more about oh yeah, I was having that badass wine with my pals Holly and Mike around this awesome table. Start recording in your wine journal the other senses. What was the band that was playing? Where was the sun? What was the moon phase? What was the dog? And that will anchor your tasting experience a whole lot better than I got Acacia. What's Acacia? What does that even mean?
I got Acacia.
And I will tell you right now, what you can't see is that here we have a power outage, and so it's a bit warm. and so for me, having this Prosecco and having this Vermentino, you're tasting it, and I'm kind of immediately, my brain is like, I'm sitting on a beach. It is maybe sunset. Your toes are at the edge of the water, and you're having a glass of the Prosecco and the Vermentino, and there's a little breeze, and it's just lovely and wonderful, and you're smelling the sea air, and maybe someone just gave you some oysters, and you're just enjoying yourself. I mean, that's to me that is a perfect moment with both of these wines for me. Yeah, that would be kind of where I go with these.
Right,
I second that sentiment. And everyone knows I'm a big fan of Gary Vee, and Gary Vee also says is 98% of most somms are assholes. He's in the 2% today, guys. Super cool, down to earth, just flossed on me. I don't know how many times. I got to look up so many words that he just employed right now because I told you I only have so many brain cells. But so erudite and down to earth at the same time. We love this guy, and we haven't even got to the reds. I'm Italian. I'm biased about Italian wine and Italian winemakers. I found a Virginia winery that just does Italian wine. I'm in heaven.
Yeah, primarily Italian varieties. We also grow French varieties, which is a testament to me of how not ossified our philosophy is. In Italy, one of the reasons Luca left Italy, because people are like, why on earth would you leave Piemonte? He said because he would be hamstrung his entire winemaking career by the limited varieties that are known to work in that region. By coming to Virginia, it opened up the entire oeuvre. He didn't grow up knowing what Cabernet Franc tasted like or what Viognier was good for. He learned that by experimentation and by sharing intel with our neighbors. He became an American citizen. He's a dual citizen just 2 or 3 years ago, in part because he wanted to show his commitment to being here. It's not, I'm Italian, showing the Virginians our way. It's, I'm bringing with me the heritage and legacy of him being a third-generation winemaker and 8 generations of Zonin know-how, but blending that literally and like interweaving that wisdom with the innovation that was possible by being in a completely new region. And you have to humble yourself to that. The arrogance that we associate with, we've been doing it this way for 1,000 years and that's the way we're going to do it.
Especially with Italians from the north.
Ah, right?
The industrialists.
Yeah. We're all Italians from the south.
We're all villagers. We came here for something better. But if you were from the north, you stayed because you were rich.
Right.
So you didn't need to leave.
Your pasta had eggs. Ours was flour and water.
We had flour and water that you cook and put some salsa and some tomatoes on. But I think it's Nebbiolo time, and while we're looking at the Nebbiolo for a second, I mean, we talk about Luca, and one of the things I always tell people, immediately people start talking about Virginia wine, or I may, just immediately say, Mike, you've asked me what are my sort of wine experiences, right? Like what gets you into this industry, or what are some of your favorite wine experiences? And some of it is about the people and just some of the people that you meet that really set the tone for the wine that you're having. And Luca is absolutely one of these people. I mean, please everybody go visit Barboursville and talk to Luca and have the chance to meet him, because or if you see that Barboursville is doing an event in your area, go to the event, because Luca Paschina is absolutely one of the warmest, nicest, sweetest people you'll ever meet, and giving, and the Italian hospitality at the estate is incredible. And we love Luca in this business, and we have had many friends go down to the winery and people that we know and recommend, and we tell them all about it, and they come back and they're like, oh man, you were right, like that was spectacular. And it's a wonderful place to visit, and a lot of that is because of Luca.
Thanks for saying so.
Yeah, and I can remember sitting at the estate, and you have the beautiful wildflower gardens there, where we don't have the rosé in front of us, but there's I guess where the horse Allegrante was at one point in time, and this beautiful wildflower estate, and you're overlooking that as you're sitting on the deck, and we were able to do a sample of the Vermentino. It was a tank sample, I guess, and it was, at the time, it was not ready yet. It was still very cloudy.
Nice.
But we got a chance to taste that, and I remember thinking, this is going to be special. At that stage, you can start to tell where this wine is going to go, and it at the time when you taste it like that, it's very bright. It's very like the acidity and the lemon and the brightness of it is popping out. But just one of those moments where Luca is sharing. He wants to help you learn in a beautiful setting and in a good way, or being out in the vineyards where Nebbiolo is and talking about the fact that it was a freezing night the night before, and having to be out there at the estate in the middle of the night with smudge pots, with the candles burning, trying to warm the grapes, and then the Nebbiolo that I'm gonna let Jason talk about this. But one of my favorite memories of listening to Luca talk was hearing about how he romanticizes the Nebbiolo grapes. That on cold nights he has to put these smudge pots out and these candles to burn in the vineyards to keep the grapes warm. And we all kind of looking at it, it's like, you need to sell these candles. I mean, this is going to be marketed as this romanticizing the Nebbiolo grapes, and there needs to be like a scent that you could market these candles as.
Well, you're tapping into the work that goes behind. Like, here we're getting to the last step, right? When it's in your glass in your mouth. But this is from farming. I know I may not look like the farmer. Clearly, I'm a front of the house guy. But the farming that's required to bring Nebbiolo forth. This is the most celebrated Nebbiolo in the world not made in Piemonte. Fact. Google it. Luca has been...
I'm not going to look it up.
Yeah.
You don't got to look it up after that sip.
Oh, no. Wine Folly. There's blogs out there that talk about... they mention Nebbiolo from Virginia. It's Barboursville.
Right. Well, so this wine... There are 21 countries that are growing Nebbiolo. And fun fact, the world's largest Nebbiolo vineyard is actually not in Italy. It's in Baja, California. It's in Mexico. They make a port style out of it, 1,200 uninterrupted hectares of Nebbiolo. Our idea was to have a Barbaresco style Nebbiolo made on our estate. The first vintage was 1998, that same vintage that I discovered the Sangiovese. And Nebbiolo is a pain in the ass to grow. It's very thin-skinned. Much like Pinot Noir, although not related directly, they are kissing cousins stylistically. You can see the lightness of color, but don't be fooled by light color. Remember that the texture and the tannins and the phenolics in wine don't just come from skin contact, they come from the pips, from the seeds, from the stems. So there is meticulous hand sorting. This is a variety that we tend to all by hand. If we were looking at a cluster where the grapes attach to the cluster, there's the pedicel and the peduncle. And I forget, one of them is how the cluster attaches to the vine, and another word is where the grape attaches to the cluster. But the important thing is, where other varieties you can mechanically harvest and separate the grapes or clusters, Nebbiolo is so thin that you would tear the skin, and by ripping the fruit, fermentation would start in the field and would run wild. So we'd have to have a kid gloves approach to Nebbiolo. And at a time when there's talk about migrant workers and low skill labor, there is nothing low skill about picking fruit and wineries around the country. Some of our pickers have been with us for 20, 25 years through immigrant laborers.
Nothing's easy.
Practice. They come up from Central and South America, and they are the first line of defense. They are cutting off blighted berries. They're making sure there are no stink bugs. They are leaving fruit on the vine that needs more time and only removing the most productive clusters.
It's a discerning eye.
Absolutely.
Walking the fields.
Yeah. And doing it with joy.
Absolutely.
Like the bread bakers, they talk about having an equanimous mind. Like the mind must be even in order to make bread that is filled with love. Same idea. We take good care of our workers. That's part of the sustainability. Sustainability isn't just, are you being good shepherds of your land? Are you being good shepherds of your humans?
But maybe it's the advent of technology that we have this dismissive view of trades. I don't know. You food
I
brought you to
totally
the
agree.
business. Food brought me to the business through the pizza business, and Holly, I know can attest this too. But that discerning eye, when that picker goes to pick that grape, he sees so much that I would never see. You know, and kudos to them and for all their hard work and skill and that goes unsung. I feel so. This is what this show is about. Is we're champions for the unsung.
Yeah.
We're champions for Italian winemakers and Italian wine. This Nebbiolo is so delicious. All you Cali cab drinkers do not know what you're missing.
Oh my gosh.
You're so
That's what I want to say to
boring.
that.
You're so boring. But I don't know.
But if you are a Cali Cab drinker,
we sell those too.
Yeah.
but go onto casewinelife.com and order the Barboursville Nebbiolo and give it a shot because you will love it.
You will love it. It doesn't have that tannic fruit bomb mouth feel that you want when you're eating your double eagle porterhouse with a gallon of ranch with your side salad to cut the flavor. And I really want to. I've asked Holly this so many times because I'm on a mission, Jason. I really feel like Italian wines have been marginalized. You spoke about this, and I loved it in your origin story. How in the late '90s you saw the Super Tuscans enjoy this, or Italian wines enjoy this resurgence thanks to the Super Tuscans. Do you feel that it's a fair statement that Italian wines have been marginalized because of the, I guess, marketing prowess of the California wine industry? Or is it because of the American palate, where we need big, and Holly's talked about this a lot too, and Holly, we're supporting her, she's trading for her sommelier right now, that we need wines to cut through that gallon of ranch.
Okay.
And this silky, supple Nebbiolo that I just want to cuddle up with doesn't, you know.
All right, you pose an excellent question. So the good news is the American food and wine IQ has never been higher. We've climbed out of the hangover we had from the oak and butter and one-note wines, in general, I would say, of the late 90s and early 2000s. We've moved into a place where people are talking about the provenance of their food much more mainstream, right?
The authenticity of
and
food
typicity,
and wine.
right?
Yeah.
The somewhere-ness. And when it comes to somewhere-ness, that any generic wine doesn't have that. What those generic wines may have is consistency and a value proposition on the price side. But somewhere-ness is what great oysters and cheese bring us to, right? It transports us. Literally and figuratively. When you're drinking the oyster liquor, you're having the brackish water from another place. When you're having that cheese that was finished in an alpine mountain, you're being transported there in your taste buds, but also like just that energetically, someone loved land and milk and now it's in your body and there's a transference of energy. When it comes to Italian wine, and this isn't only for Italian wine, but looking through that lens of these indigenous varieties, where one of the negatives of that moment in the 90s is that there was a movement toward international varieties. And now we've seen a resurgence of indigenous varieties as the next generation has taken over and they're like, you know what? I respect my dad, but really I respect my grandfather more because he was all about growing the varieties that were unique to that particular region. And it's taken us having a higher food and wine IQ to understand, to not be afraid to pronounce Falanghina. There's 25 life hacks you need to know. One of my wine hacks is when you're looking at a wine list and you see a grape you can't pronounce from a country you didn't know grew grapes, you should order that wine because it is impossible for that not be able to pronounce wine from a place you never heard of to be on the list and not be delicious. It has to be delicious. Multiple channel. Like I wouldn't call that offbeat. But when I see Arioritico, Blaufränkisch, Cor de Volpe, Emir Ferment, Durif, Hontorabizori, Insolia, Jacques, Kisi, Loriero, Malagusia, Negreto, Bede, Petit Mansan, Caporato, Ruke, Surcial, Tiburon, Uchalut, Vermentino, Japunchek, Zweigelt.
Order all of them now.
This A to Z, this panoply of grape varieties, if they are on a list, it's typically because a sommelier is like, well, I can't charge as much as I would have. I can't put the same markup because no one's going to order it. So it's not only a better value, but it's a better wine. And you should order that weirdness that's on a list. And because we're at a moment where that can be supported, I think we're seeing a resurgence of importers wanting to bring small farmers. We're seeing more woman winemakers shining. We're seeing more focus on minimal interventionist winemaking.
Biodynamic.
Yeah, and like that's one marker of minimal interventionist. We are not organic or biodynamic. Our climate doesn't allow, but we are minimal interventionist in both the vineyard and the cellar. And that resonates with people. If you're going to spend all the time looking at labels at Whole Foods and then you're going to buy some bullshit wine,
Cali
you
Cab.
just undid all of that. Do you know how many wines have mega purple in it? This food grade dye that makes that $9.99 generic blend so dark in your glass. Be a better consumer.
There's $100 bottles of wine, Holly, that contain mega purple. Am I correct?
Oh yes, absolutely.
$100 bottles of wine that you buy at retail that contain mega purple, that make it more purple for you because we're so color centric. Purple is yummy. Let's draw with purple and crayon with purple. And, do things with purple. But, no, this Nebbiolo is such an experience.
That was one of my other favorite Luca stories. So my husband and I spent one of our wedding anniversaries at Barboursville. And
No invite.
and Luca, was gracious and gave us a 1998, the first vintage of the Nebbiolo.
Wow.
And
showstopper.
Oh, absolutely. And so, and he said, don't wait to open it. He said, just the occasion is the night that you open it. So don't wait to open it and save it for any kind of a special occasion, and just enjoy it. And I think back to a story that you told about the Nebbiolo, where when you first started with Barboursville, going and knocking on all these doors, and going and visiting all these somms and saying, oh, I have this, wine, and people saying, oh, you're from Virginia, no thank you. And it really took some time to, and even the critics, said, oh, Nebbiolo from Virginia, and it wasn't until much later when the critics retried some of those early vintages of Nebbiolo and said, oh, sorry, we made a mistake.
Well, I encourage people to, we call it counterfeit classico. Holly and I have done this several times where we line up the classic wine for that grape. Let's talk Chardonnay from Burgundy, Vermentino from Sardinia, Nebbiolo from Piemonte, and then put beside them their Virginia counterparts. And the best way to taste is blind.
Paper bag.
Yeah, I mean, it takes all of the preconditioning, all of that bias that we all have inherently.
So much projection.
Yeah, we take that out. And when you start to approach these wines with an open mind, an open heart, and a refreshed palate, you discover that right in our own backyard, presuming people are in the region, you get to have the same experience that we all love about our European counterparts, that they can jump in their little Alfa Romeo and only 20 kilometers down the road, we're going to see Domino Michele. He's what does he grow? Non lo sai, vino località, right? He's growing just like what's in the neighborhood, and we're like, oh my gosh, I want to live that life. You can! Save your frequent flyer miles. And whether you come to my estate or any one of the 300 winery plus in Virginia, you can go and visit a place where grapes are growing, where they're making wines that are true to the spirit of that place. With 300 plus wineries in the state, are all of them excellent? No. But God doesn't put wineries in ugly places, so you're going to be in a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And chances are, if you follow at least a little of the intel we're giving you, you're going to stumble onto something really special. And what you get to do is create a relationship. Instead of, oh my gosh, I love that Italian winery, and I emailed them and I'm on their list. Go and meet with the dude who is growing the grapes, with the guy and the woman who are making the wines. And when you establish that kind of relationship, you start to have a different approach. You will be proud. Like, stop bringing the Yankee Candle as your hostess gift. Start grabbing things that are made in your neighborhood and take them with you. I am designating all of you as ambassadors of wherever you are. If you're in Virginia, awesome. You've got everything from cantaloupes to oysters to wine and cheese. Anywhere there is a food shed, and chances are there's a booze shed around you. Is there a distillery you could be proud of? Is there a meadery? Is there a cidery?
Pizza shop.
Yeah, show up with shit from your neighborhood. That's good.
That's good. And you're not cool anymore if you're just a subscriber to a wine club. That's so what? 2002.
Basic.
It's very basic. Oh, I subscribe to this wine club. I subscribe to that wine club. You're not cool anymore. Get in the car, drive down, go to Barboursville, and taste these amazing wines from this visionary, Gianni Zonin.
Yeah.
And
True
Luca
visionary,
Pasquino,
who in 1976 bought some dirt
Yeah.
and said, hey, maybe TJ, Thomas Jefferson, was right. The terroir and climate is great.
They thought he was pazzo. They're crazy.
Pazzo è crazy.
Right. 900 acres for those of you still thinking about like social distancing or whatever. There's plenty of room to spread out. We have a restaurant, Palladio, 4-time James Beard nominated.
Amazing.
We have our library, 1821, where you can have a tasting with back vintages. So if you want to see what we've been talking about, like I want to try that 98 that Holly's been talking about, you can. We open up all the old stuff.
You get to pick the vintages. You can say, okay, and Luca sat with us and he said, this is a warm vintage. This was a cool client. So if you want to kind of really understand, this was a cool vintage. This was warm. This is going to be this way. This is going to be this way. You can have a contrast. And it's really cool when you kind of start to understand.
I love tasting that way. We have accommodations, so you can drink as much wine as you want and spend the night. And we have a new addition to the property. We just opened it 2 weeks ago. We're calling it the Wine Barn. And we built onto our Paxito barn, our air drying barn, where the Governor's Cup wine was made.
And where the guanciale's hidden.
And the guanciale is hidden. You can have wine outside along with local artisan ice cream sandwiches from Nightingale. Because who doesn't love rosé and ice cream sandwiches? The older Luca and I get, the more we regress to 12.
That's about it. Everyone else loves them, but
I
ISIS.
think I'm in heaven now.
Exactly. But you mentioned the restaurant,
Palladio.
So Luca, and I do due diligence, believe it or not, I do prepare for these interviews, especially with someone like Jason, who's just floored me today. You have an open invitation to come on the show anytime you want. If you're in the car, just call in and talk some trash.
Long time listener, first time caller.
Yeah, long time listener, first time caller. You're the 19th caller. Anytime you want to be, just don't tell the 18th caller or whatever. But Lucas said, and he understands promotion. He said, I think when you started making Octagon, we decided to open the restaurant. Was the tasting room not enough of a catalyst
Great question.
As a catalyst for wine? Or is it just an Italian thing? We need to eat.
Well, when you were asking before about why it has Italian wine been marginalized, because, and you said it at the top of the show.
I did?
You treat wine as food. And Americans are only now learning to respect wine as food. Do you know, like this newest generation above 21, they are the first generation to drink spirits first, beer second, and wine third. Boomers drink wine first, beer second, spirits third.
Boomers weren't Jack Daniels and
They had much higher discretionary income, right? But they drank a lot of. They would spend more money on wine, right? This generation, they will go out. These are the habits that we've started to understand. They will order a $15 craft cocktail and then drink beer, but then they drink cheap shit wine at home. And what you're seeing with all of these alcopops and hard seltzers and such is that the market is shifting to try and meet them where they are. Yes. Holly and I are close in age, and we grew up with like wine coolers and stuff. But
yes, we
Bartles
did.
and James.
Bartles and James,
right? But fine wine was still something that one aspired to.
unattainable.
And I have told many of my blue-haired collector friends, I'm like, you have to share those wines, not just with us. You have to share them with your grandchildren, or else they are not going to develop the appreciation. They're going to be like, why on earth would I spend $100 on a bottle of wine? Be like,
because you'll spend $100 on a speeding ticket.
Yes!
So you need to spend $100 on a bottle of wine. It's much more fun.
Right. The lifestyle choice comes with mentorship. And we have to renew that value prop. So there's a long way of saying that because Italians treat wine as food, they're really good at integrating wine throughout the day, throughout your food life, and throughout your celebratory life, right? The Italians alone have 3 different tiers of sparklers. Prosecco is for, I have figs and prosciutto, and the neighbors are over, let's drink this. Then there's Franciacorta, which is like, oh, okay, we're going to have a nicer dinner. And then there's Oltre Popadese, which is the Italian answer to Champagne. And, like, that's where we're going to get serious, and we're going to pull out different glasses, and they may be vintage, and, like, those are
and Barboursville has an Oltre Popadese, so 2, the Rosé and the Brut.
Absolutely.
So you can look for that, too.
So as we move into this phase where we're embracing wine as food, the obvious next move in that is, well, are you only limited in diet to like 3 vegetables and 2 proteins? Start opening up your cellar and be like, well, what am I? Last night, my wife pulled out the Lucky Peach cookbook and we had like an Asian meal. And I'm like, oh, where do we go with this? My wife doesn't love aromatic grapes. I would have gone, if you guys were over, I would have opened up a Traminer Aromatico, Gewürztraminer, had a Riesling. I'm like, that's not what she likes. What do? I'm like, sparkling to get through the spice. Yeah. So I started with, I foraged. I know where there is a public cherry tree in Richmond. Yeah. I've foraged cherries, and I made a tart cherry cooler with some Prosecco, because I was out, my SodaStream cartridge is empty, and I'm like, I'm out of club soda, I'll use Prosecco! Same thing, it's Italian soda, right? Yeah. And then I moved into sparkling, and then got into the crisp whites and rosés. So when you start to see all of these tools, think of them as just like spices in the cabinet. See them as vegetables from the CSA. Get out of your rut of, oh, I only drink Pinot or I only drink Cab. Yeah. Really? Yeah. There are like 1,300 grapes out there. Stop buying wines that are only named after the grape and start buying wines that are named after a place. If you want to land somewhere and you want to experience somewhereness, don't drink Gamay, drink Beaujolais. Don't drink Sangiovese, drink Chianti. Right? Those wines are named after a place because that place was more important than what was in the bottle.
And when Luca sits down at Palladio, you get the sense in your chef. You have an amazing female chef.
Melissa has moved on, and we have her protege, Chef Michael Claw, has been with us for 5+ years.
Awesome. So it was her sous chef, I presume. Okay. But when you see Luca sit down, and I guess they were trying out some new entrees, you get the sense that the wine is not an afterthought. And just like you were saying, all these generations in America, wine's an afterthought.
Right.
It's not. If you're coming over for peaches and figs, we're drinking Prosecco.
Right.
You know, if you're coming over for
I got
steaks.
the fig tree in the backyard.
Ooh.
You
Yeah.
didn't tell me that. No, my mom's going to drive up in like 10
The
minutes.
restaurant was
I got
a
zucchini blossoms
response.
back there too. They just bloomed. I'm excited. Might be having some zucchini blossoms this
Oh
weekend.
my, let's fry them up and fill them with ricotta.
12345 Airport Road. That's our address. Feel free to drive up
That's right next to the Sitco station. The restaurant was a way to
delicious.
provide context because Luca got tired of telling people these are wines meant for the table. It was, you know what, I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to show you. And when you see...
Illustrative.
Yeah, all of our wines are high acid. They tend to be lower in alcohol because they're meant to be integrated into your eating life more so than your cocktailing
But
life.
high acid may be confusing.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I don't know, like, per se, if this is high acid. This is so easy on my palate.
Does your mouth water when you smell the wine? Is one of my markers.
Not at all. It's like
Really?
It's like
Does your
a
jaw
juice
get
spot.
tight?
Salivary.
Nothing. No. There's nothing tannic. There's no mouthfeel or anything. I don't even need this sparkling water or a Diet Coke or actually we're a Pepsi house or a Diet Pepsi.
Sponsored content.
Sponsored content. But they're just so I hate to use the word drinkables in front of it. I hate to use the word drinkable with a budding somm and a somm because I feel like
why are we
my
using
mom
that
sent
word?
me to college and I can my word choice can be better.
Drinkable,
But
chuggable, quaffable.
they-
These are no. I
they-
wouldn't apply that to Octagon and Nebbiolo, but like that Vermentino and that Prosecco to me are very sessionable wines.
Sessionable.
Yes.
Sessionable. Very
Yes.
good. Very good.
Right?
So he mentioned Octagon.
Oh, all right.
Boom!
Let's talk about it.
Octagon with the floor plan of the ruins.
Correct. Of the mansion on the estate that Jefferson designed for the 18th governor of Virginia, James Barbour.
And when Zonin bought the estate, I guess someone said, "Hey, you should tear down these ruins." And he said, "Why? This is history."
Right.
He understood.
Yeah, people have always asked, like, are you guys gonna, like, renovate and rebuild?
Are you gonna put like a jacuzzi on it?
Yeah, that
a
could...
man cave.
Right. Why isn't there a rooftop? So, and the
It's gonna be
Italians...
outlet mall over here.
And I don't know
We
why
need a
they
J.
all
Crew.
thought that way, but... So, the idea was, what more poetic
Look at that color.
way,
No mega purple in this.
right, to
Look at that color.
express the connection. I mean, I find it so beautiful that it was an Italian viticulturalist that Jefferson brought from Italy. He brought Filippo Mazzei. Mazzei, whose name is still on every bottle of Fontarutoli Estate Chianti, also in your book, right?
Yes.
Mazzei.
And then Mattei Philippe, Cabernet Sauvignon, has the picture of Philippe. He looks remarkably like George Washington.
I've been trying to get the hair just right, the same way. Mazzei brought with him his assistant enologist was Giannini, and Giannini brought 11 children with him. And when
Back when they didn't have Netflix.
but they were chilling, that's right. They struck out after 7 years, never produced a single bottle of wine due to phylloxera, this grape louse, and that's another story for another time. But suffice to say, Mazzei is like, I'm out of here. I'm going back to
10
Italy.
hours
I
today.
gave you 10 hours.
I'll give you 10 hours.
Giannini said, I'm going back to Italy as well. And he packed up his family and went back. But one son fell in love with a Virginian and stayed behind. And that one Giannini proceeded to have 11 children of his own. And to this day, there are Gianninis sprinkled around Virginia. And we
I got a bad
had
check.
a reunion.
I got this bad
I
check.
got a bad check. Their names are like Bubba and Trey,
And that
but they're
was-
in
that was from
Charlottesville.
Bubba.
That was from
Bubba
Bubba.
wrote that.
Bubba Giannini's like, hey, listen here. There's a Jersey accent.
We're not collecting. We're not
Bubba wrote
collecting.
that check for a pizza, and it was.
Yeah. Wow, look at this color. Okay, can the somm come out a little bit?
Yeah, all right, let's talk. Let's sommify this wine.
Let's sommify this wine. Drop some tasting notes on
that. All right, I am addressing wine number 5. Wine number 5 is a red wine.
Robert Parker right here.
The reason...
The Hong Kong tasting, 2 hours long.
It was my exam recently.
You saw about the Hong Kong tasting?
No, my blind tasting. I had to do 12 blind wines.
Wow. 12 wines wine.
Yeah, 12 wines wine.
All right, so the first thing that comes out with this wine are these effusive aromatics. If anyone in TV land has a second hand on their watch, I'm going to cue you up in a moment because I'm going to show you, for me, the difference between a $15 wine and a $50 bottle of wine. At least what should be inherent. First is the nose. And whether you smell strawberries, blackberries, huckleberries, what's important is it shy or is it ebullient in its nose? And I want to take that dimmer switch, the more money I spend, and I want to turn it up. So right here, I have a really generous nose, right? This wine's been open for what? For a half hour, 45 minutes?
How long were you in traffic?
Okay, so it's been open since 6 a.m.
DC traffic is back.
It's been open, but we haven't decanted it.
No.
And still, it's showing a lot of leg on the nose, if you will. And I encourage everyone to spend a little more time on the nose than you have been. Actually, you should spend even more time on the eye. When I used to taste with Master Sommelier Robert Jones, he watched me go through my progression, and I went to smell, and he's like, "You're done looking at it?" He's like, "Really? Do you know how much information there is in that wine just from the eyes?" And you just passed right over that. I'm like, "It's red," and it's still. He's like, "Okay, hold on." So start unpacking that wine with your eyes. And look, there are wines we talk over and wines we talk about. And I have no problem if we're just talking over the wines when the company and the food and the occasion are about more than the wine. But on those occasions when you're gathering to be with the wine, or you're with a wine that is so show-stopping you can't help but be with the wine, these are some of the things that you should be considering.
Showstopper.
What is this color? It's not just red. What kind of red is it? Is it garnet? Is it brick? Is it
this deep ruby?
Deep ruby. Great. And then are we looking at the concentration of color in the core and then how it fades to the rim? You know, here's a great experiment. Can I have a little bit of that Voss in here, please?
Yes, sir.
So watch this. We would all agree, hang on before you pour, that this and this are the same, right? They're the same color. We've added, you can pour a little bit more, please. We've added water here. I can't change the color by adding no color. So these are the same color. So what's the difference? The difference is in the concentration, is in the intensity. So these are things that we're paying attention to, that onion skin rim around here. I'm looking at the concentration and the intensity of that color. I'm also looking for clues. Is this a young wine, in which case the purpley hues will show, or am I starting to see some of the orange and browns? Red wines lose color with age, white wines gain color with age. I expect to see my aged Chardonnay, Viognier, Vermentino to start to get some amber reflections. But speaking of reflections, what about the light in the wine? We're in this time of natural wines, unfiltered wines, cool. We can look at the reflectivity and the brilliance of the wine, which speaks to its naturalness, but also how it was handled in the cellar. Is it star bright? Is it day bright? Is it bright?
Back, we had some technical difficulties with Jason Tesauro from Barboursville Vineyards.
I'm getting such beautiful eucalyptus herbs and black fruits. The wood is there, really nicely integrated, but it's sweet black and red fruits give me this high note that like tickle up top. And then in the mid palate, this is where the velvety tannins, strong acid making my mouth water, and that leather and brambly forest floor come in. I get a lot of earthiness. And then the finish, this is where I want you to hyperlapse and start measuring your wine in terms of its length. And the way that I said that the nose is really turned up, the finish here I feel like any wine over $50 should translate into seconds of finish.
Oh, yeah.
A $50 wine should last 50 seconds at the least.
Yeah, this finish is going on and on.
There's a lot of cassis in here for me. That eucalyptus is repeated in the finish. There's a lot of brightness and leather.
Bright fruit.
Chewy tannins that want food. This is a 20-year wine. Our projections for Octagon, we only make it in exceptional vintages based on Merlot. And then the reason you need to know red blends in Virginia, this has Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot. Sometimes it has Cabernet Sauvignon. If Virginia gives it to us, red blends allow winemakers to adjust on the fly to vintage variation. One of the reasons we love wine is vintage variation. Why do we care whether it's 2020, 2019, 2021? Because the weather was different and the vintage expresses different things. If it was a drought vintage, we're looking for a smaller crop but higher intensity. If it was a rainy, cool vintage, we're looking for a bumper crop but lightness. Wines that will be accessible at a much more youthful age. And maybe they end up being more tart, less collectible. It doesn't mean that they're not drinkable, but it's a different textural, sensuous experience. Red blends allow winemakers to adjust. Oh, I'm missing the tannin from Cabernet Sauvignon because it didn't ripen. Let's amp up the amount of Petit Verdot and let's lean into the juicy mid-palate of Merlot to replace some of the red fruits we lost from Cabernet Sauvignon. We don't put recipes and percentages on the back label because we taste them and blend blind, not based on our preconceived notions of what a blend should be. We're going for what's delicious and what's ageable and what feels right to our style. This wine put Virginia on the map because it was the first Virginia wine that was treated by the international and national wine press as world-class, as ageable, and was an example of what was possible out of this nascent wine region, Virginia. It is still, in my opinion, the best red wine on the East Coast, but now I'm happy to say that there are a lot of excellent red blends coming out of Virginia that are worthy of your dollar and your cellar throughout the state. We are not an anomaly. We are part of a brother and sisterhood of really delicious things being made in our backyard.
I love the magnanimity. I love the community. Their wines speak for themselves. It's glass art. Holly and I have this running joke about wine. We call it glass art. All these wines are glasses of art. Barboursville Vineyards. This is my first experience with them. This will not be my last. Smash that like button. All these wines will be on casewinelife.com. You're going to see them on TikTok. You're going to see them on Insta. You're going to see them everywhere. I'm all about this vineyard. I fell in love with them. Thank you again, Holly, for this.
You're welcome.
This milestone of introduction. Holly Roccoferracci, Republic National. Jason Tesauro.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Tesauro. Paisan. Grazie.
Grazie mille. Grazie mille.
Salve.
Come see me on the estate. I have the keys to the cellar. I love to use them.
Oh.
There you go.
There you go.
Smash that like button. Subscribe, like, comment. Thank you, Jason. Barboursville Vineyards. How do you say it? This wine is so good.
This one.
Barboursville Vineyards.
Barboursville Vineyards. Amazing. We'll be back. He'll be back on the show.
Yes.
Open invitation.
Yes.
He's going to call from the car and talk trash one day.
We know what? We're going to go do a show from Barboursville.
We're going to go vlog from Barboursville.
Yes.
We promised Matthew Meyer of Williamsburg Wine we're going to do one from Williamsburg. We're going to do Williamsburg too.
Absolutely.
And he's good friends with Jason. So it's one big family. We're putting Virginia on the map. And again, Italy is back because California cabs are boring. Look out.